Hello and welcome back to another video. Today I'm going to be covering the meta and what's performing well in patch 13.1b, so let's get into it. For the top lane, there are two big performers at the moment, one being Olaf. His ability to level 1 Q chase into a very strong early game transition makes him really good. His ability to win against a lot of the popular champs as well, Mordekaiser, he does really well in this matchup, it's one of his strongest. Aatrox is underperforming considerably, but he is still pretty good at the moment for a lot of people. Works quite well into him. Jace becoming more popular, and Cassante being pretty strong at the moment makes Olaf a good answer into all of these. His strong itemization of being able to go Triforce first, Ravenous first, Strikebreaker first, so he has a lot of flex potential in his options, makes him really strong in a lot of fronts. Wave clear, strong fighting and dueling capability, strong chase, stuff like this. His low pick rate and fairly low ban rate as well make him a pretty niche option as someone who doesn't want to play a champ which gets banned and picked a lot. And there are a couple of problems when it comes to late game. After 25 minutes, he will be outscaled. He does fall off compared to a lot of other champions. But for the most part, you're playing him as an early game chase and just kill. Like his ability to kill and control lanes make him really good. Whereas on the other hand, we've got Zac at the moment, who's also really good. Zac's 2-item power spike of Demonic's Radiant, or Sunfires into Demonic, Sunfires into Radiant. There's a lot of options what he can do. The key thing being he has both Radiant and Demonic somewhere within his build. Make him really strong. Lucidities are a must buy on Zac. People still seem to go steel caps for the most part over Lucidities. Lucidities every single game. Zac is really built around CDR and being able to spam as many abilities as possible. He does have a high pick rate and ban rate. This mainly comes from his jungle presence, but overall, Zac is performing really well as a more supportive and even kill potential tank. He does fall off after 2 items. He doesn't scale as well as he used to. A lot of people seem to think that Zac has a lot of scaling to him. He doesn't perform badly in the late game, but he's definitely a lot more of an early to mid game champion. Udyr top and jungle is also performing really well at the moment. Ghost is a really valuable summoner spell in current League of Legends, and Udyr is a really good abuser of it. He can go both AD or AP tank. His AD builds still perform quite well. Your Prowlers into your Lethality or Triforce into a more Bruiser type build. His AP tank, of course, is the Demonic's Radiant. It's what makes him so strong at the moment. Conqueror for jungle is by far his best rune page. You don't proc as much grasp, or you wouldn't proc anywhere near as much grasp in the jungle, and Conqueror is just more valuable. Grasp in top lane, however, for the trades, make it his best keystone. You can run Conqueror in the top lane. I would not recommend running Grasp in the jungle. He doesn't have many weaknesses, so the main key things you've got to avoid is very high CC comps, where even running Unflinching Tenacity, you can't run through it. He also carves really well into late game with many choices after his first 2 items, his 3rd item onwards, and he is still really strong. You can go things like Sunfires, Spirits, Full Mail, Gargles. All these options are really good. The other 2 junglers I wanted to talk about are Maokai and Elise. Maokai has insane scaling at the moment. He is probably the strongest champion in the game, stronger than Kassadin, even though Kassadin is really oppressive and strong at the moment. Maokai is better. He has insane scaling. The saplings basically become nukes with Demonics and Leandries. They do so much damage, have so much control. They last for a very long time. He can go Phase Rush or First Strike. I've tried First Strike. It does better when you're going for the more AP heavy build and you're wanting to scale a lot more. But Phase Rush is probably better overall. I'd recommend going Phase Rush. Radiant works well as a second option if you want to be more tanky. Radiant is probably his best item second, but Leandries is a lot more for just upfront nuking power. Radiant is a lot more team fight orientated. For Elise, she has an incredibly powerful early game, one of the strongest at the moment. Her huge burst damage makes her really lethal. She can go PTA or Dark Harvest. I'd honestly recommend going PTA. Dark Harvest is more scaling, which you don't really need on Elise, as you're gonna be closing out games pre-25 for the most part. So I'd recommend PTA. Night Harvester is really strong on her at the moment. I avoid going Protobelt. You can also go Medjay's first if you're stacking up at early Dark Seal. Definitely recommend buying Dark Seal fairly early on. For the mid lane, Kassadin and Ryze are going to be the main 2 of this video. Kassadin's ability to start Dark Seal and D-Shield makes him really strong, as he can like curve well into Roa and Seraph's completion. He is the strongest champion in the game. Once you've completed these 2 items, he is really, really oppressive. He does so much damage. He has survivability. He has escape, control. There's just a lot of power within this champion. He spikes mostly after 20 minutes, which is where counters come in. He can, like early, before this, he loses to things like early game AD, with heavy burst, things like Pantheon, Renekton, Tristana, Jace. All of these have really, really high damage burst and can shut him down before he can get online and then allow them to close out the game. Even things like Gangplank work quite well into Kassadin as an answer. You have to make sure you're playing one of these. He does beat most other champs in his current state. Similar to Kassadin is Ryze. He is harder to play, but he has more range and more power early game. The Roa and Seraph combo is also really strong on him. When Ryze's power is a lot within the early, he actually does have a decent early game, but then it gets weaker as he's building up to his 2-item completion. When he gets his 2-item completion, he becomes really, really strong again. And then he kind of balances out late game and then can sometimes be bursted. So avoid going too late, but for the most part, you will be safe going into late game with Ryze, 2 items into Rabadon, stuff like this, make him really strong. ADC and support are fairly similar at the moment. For ADC, there's a lot of viable champions which you can play. Misfortune, Sivir, and Vayne are probably the worst of the batch at the moment. They have some weakness. A lot of them have weaknesses out of these 3. They do have good combos which can obviously get rid of their weaknesses. Things like MF and Mumu is still really strong. Sivir does work with enchanters and engage sometimes, and Vayne overall scales quite well, but can be bursted at the moment. So these 3 champs do have inherent weaknesses and are the current weakest, but they aren't bad by any means. You can still play them. Below Masters and Grandmaster, I would say avoid Aphelios and Kalista. These champions are going to be the hardest 2 to play. And although you can get good results on them, it's going to be easier to get results on other marksmen at the moment, as they are just strong. Well, not stronger, but just easier to play. And yeah, these 2 have weaknesses. Things like Kalista fall short into champs with movement speed slowing abilities. Things like Draven E and MFE are very valuable into Kalista. And the other one, for the most part, is stop playing Essence 3 for Kraken Ezreal. It's not good. People seem to be going it more and more. Triforce is his best mythic by far. Triforce into Manamune is going to be the strongest and best way to go on Ezreal. For support, there are a lot of strong pairings. Most supports are viable at the moment. Lucian Nami is still an incredibly strong bot lane, like an S+ tier bot lane. Samira plus Rao or Mumu. Samira synergizes really well with Engage and a lot of CC, as she can utilize her passive, and the peel is really valuable for Samira, so she doesn't get bursted as quickly. When playing Rao, make sure you're going Radiant Virtue. Radiant Virtue Rao is incredibly strong. I cannot say this enough. It is really good. Play it. For the most part, the other things are, instead of playing Nautilus and Thresh, play a Mumu. A Mumu is going to be easier to play and is stronger. You can, of course, still play Nautilus Thresh. These champs aren't bad. They are just worse than a Mumu, and a Mumu is easier to execute, works with more things as well. Braum and Pantheon are going to be the champs to avoid for the moment. Braum and Pantheon have weaknesses. Braum doesn't do a lot of damage, and Pantheon doesn't have a lot of survivability because it doesn't scale that well. So avoid these 2 champs. And Yuumi is really bad. She is annoying, don't get me wrong. I hate this champion as well, but she is bad. This champ does not have an early game, doesn't really have a mid game either, only really comes online after 30 minutes, and at that point you can punish the Yuumi and the game could be over by then. So I'd avoid playing Yuumi. Of course, if you're good at Yuumi, not like she has a particularly high skill ceiling, then you can still play Yuumi, but I'd recommend, if you're wanting to get LP, to play a different supportive champion. So, but for the most part, going to be the meta update. I will have a patch notes video out soon as well, as we will be getting patch 13.1c because of Riot's internal issues at the moment, and I will cover that. So if you enjoy the content, like and subscribe, and I will see you in the next one. Goodbye.